Welcome to Richard Scale Modelling. This is part A of the Hachette patchwork of HMS hood, scale 1 to 200. First of all, before I begin this video, if you do hear some tapping and banging going on in the background, that is because the next door neighbour is having some renovation done, and there's no getting away from it. There is going to be some background noise, I'm afraid. In part A, I'm starting off with the bow, but before moving on to the deck, placing the deck on, and with the deck furniture as well. I'll go on to state in the video also that I've had a few problems along the way on the build, but these are past mistakes that I made when I originally started the build. But I'll talk about that as I go along. So let's jump into this. I'm starting off with part 65, as you can see here. The only part I'll be using on this part of the build is the bow. The other part of the decking is on the later issues, which hopefully will fit into this video. There's a little bit of cleaning up to do before I join it together. Just taking off the knobs of plastic before I join the sprue. And then it's just a little bit normal cement to bond the two pieces together. It was actually quite difficult to get it to line up. It kept on sliding around to where it needed to be. There was no location pins inside the unit to stop it from doing this, so I had to be quite careful. I'm using a combination of PVA glue and super glue to bond this. It just slots in right on into the bow here. Now there is a gapping issues, but the instructions tell you that there will be gapping issues, and also once it's dried, this will need to be addressed. I'm using my filler here, so this is melted down sprue with some normal cement just to fill in the gaps. Now I've noticed that as I've been doing this that I've made a few mistakes along the way when I originally started this, so it's taken a bit of time to sort them out, but it's the nature of the beast, and I'll get it all sorted eventually. So now that the filler dries, it's just time to give it a light sanding to get it all to marry up with the rest of the hull. Moving on to issue 66, and the predominant part of this issue is actually a part that was left over from issue 43, and that's the photo etch part. I'll just get to show you the issue. There's the issue there, and it's just this metal plate that's got to go at the front of the ship. So all I have to do is cut it off the sprue. Remember, this photo etch stuff is rather tough, so it takes quite an effort to take it away from the sprue tree. And then using some PVA glue, I'm attaching the front part on. This little front part here didn't fit brilliantly. This is because me, not because of the kit. I didn't line up the walls properly, so in the end I had to file it down flush to the wall. But as I said, these are the little mistakes that I'm finding out as I'm building this ship. Remember, I was like nearly 10 years ago I started this build, and my skills have grown since then. So it was probably a good job that I stopped when I did. And now it's back to the plastic sprue that was issue 66, and these are just little brackets and things that go into the sidewalls. They can be tricky to fit because everything is in situ. In the instructions it says don't glue this part, the main unit, if you're putting in a remote control device and receiver. I didn't do that, so I said it was okay to glue it, but I wish I hadn't done in retrospect, because it makes putting these little parts on very difficult. So that's one side done, and moving on to the other side. Again, trying to get the best angle for you to have a look at. I can't emphasize enough how difficult this was to place these parts on. However, once all these little parts are on, I'll take it away and get the top half of this build primed and ready for painting. So now it's all primed, and it's time to paint the side walls, and I'm using Rebel Aquacolor 43 medium grey to paint this. So I'm just using my flat brush to give it nice sweeping strokes to apply the pigment, and all the sidewalls will be getting the same colour. And while that's drying, I was shifting over to the guns, and these are getting painted in the same colour, the 43 grey, and it's just a simple basic coat all around. A bit difficult to paint because of the nooks and crannies of the guns. And now I'm coming to the decking. There's a few bits to cut out here. I'm using my knife just to run along the seam of the print. Now you can use scissors if you wish, but I'm just using my hobby knife. Once the part's trimmed out, I'm just checking to make sure that I've got it as close as possible to it before attaching it. As you can see, it's quite flimsy, so if you're ever doing decking like this, you have to be careful when you're cutting it. To attach it is fairly simple. I'm just spreading over some PVA glue on the actual wooden surface here before attaching it. The couple of end parts did come off, so I put them in separately, which in the end was a good thing because they had to be trimmed down to size. They were just slightly too wide for the area that needs to be going into. But once they were in, it was just a simple case of pushing in the main decking plate here, pushing it in as tight as possible to marry up with the little bits that had broken off. Then gently pressing down, making sure there's no air bubbles inside. And then I'm going to the other end here to place this part. Now the instructions say do this last, but it's a tight area to work in, so I thought it was better to place it in now, and I can easily marry up or trim the middle parts to fit, than trying to get this trimmed and fitted. And then it was onto the middle section, and it just fits in between. I did have to trim up ever so slightly for it to fit, but like the other two main parts, it just slides up, butts up against the wall, and pressing down firmly to take out any air bubbles. And once that's done, the edge piece, just move my camera slightly, is to go in, and that finishes off this section of the decking. As you can see, I've done the other side. It's just this thin strip I'm placing in now. Now originally this was just one long strip, but I decided to cut it in the middle. It was easier that way to get it to fit properly on each side. Next, on issue 68, I'm preparing the decking furniture. So this is all the little boxes and pipes and things like that that go onto the deck. As you can see, they are metal parts, so these have to be painted. And I'm painting them with Revel Aquacolor 43 medium grey once more. Now I'll take a couple of coats with these. I didn't prime them because it would have been a pain in the backside to prime. So I'll just show you the bars here that I've got to place in. So this is for issue 68 and 67. And it just showing you the locations of each individual bit. So there's quite a few to put on here. So therefore, obviously there's a few to paint. As I said, I didn't prime them because I didn't have anything small enough to hold them to prime them. So I made a decision just to paint them straight on the metal, but I knew this would require several coats of paint, and it took about 3 days to paint these little parts because of that. But once they were painted and all dry, they were ready to go on. So it's a little bit of super glue to place them on. Now this part I'm placing on here is the largest of these metal parts to put on. This one was fairly straightforward to put on, but the rest are quite tricky to line up and get straight. The deck does have marked out areas for a lot of it though, and that helped with the location while putting these parts on, but some of them, like the capstans, are tiny to put them on. Also, when I'm doing this, I have to be very careful where I'm putting the glue, because this wooden deck, it'll stain easily. So I had to make sure that I didn't have any excess glue on each part before placing it on. So I'll go through the entire deck putting on these little parts. There's no point in showing you them all because they're all basically the same, just in different locations. So this will bring the part 8 to an end. There's a lot being done, but it took around about an entire week from my last video to this one to get these parts done. So the progress is slow, but that is mainly due as well to past mistakes I done many years ago and tried to rectify them as I'm going along when I'm discovering them. There'll probably be more down the line, but there's not much I can do about that. I will just have to fix them as I go along. Once all the parts are fitted, I shall repaint some of them. I've chipped some of the paint off with the tweezers while placing them in. Again, it's because the material is metal, so it's easily just to chip off the paint as you're working with these parts. But it's not any great disaster or anything like that. Any model building, you are going to have to repaint some of your paintwork, especially if you do it the way I build my models. Not necessarily the correct way, not necessarily the wrong way. You know, you always do what you think is best, and as long as it's good for you, that's it. It doesn't really matter. So if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for the rest of the parts of this build, or indeed the other videos on the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll be notified of the future updates to this build and of course on the builds I've got planned in the coming months. Hit that like button and of course leave a comment. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.